couple years ago, I picked up this laptop for free, a ThinkPad X131E. This device, being from pre-2010, has fairly modest specifications, which are definitely reflected of its age. However, this particular laptop is not your average consumer model. It's an education device, designed specifically to be inexpensive while still providing basic computing functionalities for students. These types of laptops often feature lower end components to reduce the overall cost, making them more affordable for education places like schools. The ThinkPad was primarily intended for basic tasks like word processing, light web browsing, and possibly some media consumption. As a result, when you look at the device's original specs, it becomes clear that this was never meant to handle intensive workloads. But that's precisely why it makes it interesting in 2024. Can such a low-cost, low-spec device still be used for something other than being a doorstop or a paperweight? Well, without further ado, let's get into this. The key to unlocking any potential with an older budget laptop like this is choosing the right software. For this instance, I could have opted in by using Windows 7, which could be a good choice several years ago. However, Windows 7 is just not supported anymore, which means it doesn't get security updates anymore, and newer softwares like Steam or Firefox are no longer compatible. While Windows 10 is an option, it's way more demanding on the hardware. Given the ThinkPad's components are on the older side, running Windows 10 would likely result in a sluggish performance, especially when trying to multitask. In this case, Linux is the most logical choice. The Linux operating system tends to be lighter on resources, making them a great choice for older hardware. But even within the Linux ecosystem, there are multiple options available, each with different levels of system demands. Some distros like paperweight can be slightly heavy on resources, while others like Arch or Ubuntu are much lighter. Given that the ThinkPad is not a very old device in the computer realm, I wanted to go for something that strikes between a balance between usability and lightness. After some consideration, I settled on Linux Mint XFCE. Why? Because it's known for being user-friendly, stable, and easy to install. Additionally, since it's based on Debian and Ubuntu, there is a vast repository of softwares available for installation. Before we dive into the software experience, let's have a closer look at the laptop's hardware. It comes equipped with a Celeron N1007 processor, clocked at 1.5 GHz. It's a dual-core processor with 2 threads, which, well, low end by modern standards, still offers a degree of multitasking abilities. It's definitely not going to run the latest games or video editing software, but it can handle basic office tasks, web browsing, and light media consumption. The graphics are powered by Intel HD Graphics 3rd Gen, clocked at 3500 MHz. While these graphics are compatible with DirectX 11, they won't be much use for Linux, as that system does not use DirectX. However, we do have Vulkan, a graphics API that is supported on Linux that can be used to translate DX to Vulkan. The laptop originally came with 4 GB of DDR3 RAM, which is fine for lighter tasks, but can be limiting when it comes to multitasking. I upgraded it to 8 GB, which is a significant improvement. With 8 GB of RAM, the laptop has no issues running a few applications or browser tabs together, which is crucial when dealing with an older machine. The screen is a standard 720p display. While far from impressive by modern standards, it's still fine for reading, writing, and basic media consumption. The viewing angles are decent, and the brightness is for indoor use, though it's not something you wouldn't use outside in direct sunlight. One of the most surprising aspects of the ThinkPad is its array of ports. It has an impressive selection of ports. There are 3 USB ports, which 2 of them are USB 3.0, an Ethernet port, VGA, HDMI, and an SD card slot. This is quite a bit more than you see on modern laptops, particularly for those from Apple. The inclusion of an Ethernet port is especially useful, as modern laptops normally get rid of this feature, relying on Wi-Fi. The VGA and HDMI cords are great for connecting the laptop to external displays, while the SD card can be handy for transferring files from cameras or other devices. Perhaps one of the most appealing things about this ThinkPad is how easy it is to upgrade and repair. It just takes 3 screws to access the RAM, SSD, and Wi-Fi card. If you need to replace the keyboard, it only takes about 5 minutes. You only need to get 2 more screws to access that. So this laptop is very easy to work on compared to other modern machines, which a modern machine could be way more complicated, involving more screws or plastic clips, and the ease of just upgrading the stuff just means you can just upgrade it if you want without replacing the whole system. With the hardware out of the way, let's talk about the performance. Linux Mint XFCE is a relatively light OS, using about a gig of RAM at idle and only consuming about 1% of your CPU while doing nothing. The light footprint means that the operating system leaves plenty of resources for the applications. I tested the system by performing some basic tasks like browsing the file manager, looking at pictures, and adjusting settings. and everything was snappy and responsive. There were no noticeable slowdowns when performing these simple tasks. System updates also worked great, thanks to the built-in update manager. You can even configure the repos to use mirrors that are close to you for faster downloads. And one of the great uses for this laptop is word processing. I was able to write this whole video on the ThinkPad using LibreOffice, and the experience was very smooth. And this is indeed because of the keyboard. The keyboard was very good too. It had good travel, and overall was a very good keyboard. The 8GB of RAM greatly helped while switching tabs or having multiple documents open without significant lag. If you're a student, teacher, or someone who just needs a machine for writing papers, taking notes, or drafting simple documents, this laptop is great for that. For multimedia tasks, the ThinkPad performs very well. I'm a big fan of listening to music, and I was just curious if this could handle audio without any issues. I tried some lossless CD files, which would be the worst case scenario for this computer, and despite of the worst case scenario, it ran great. There was no slowdowns, no nothing, just ran. Next, I tried video playback. I used VLC to play a DVD, and the laptop handled it without any issue. The experience was smooth, but then I tried ripping the DVD, which is very slow because of the poor encoding. I also tried playing Blu-ray videos, and the ThinkPad performed pretty well given its age. While it's not going to be a powerhouse for 4K videos, it can easily do 1080p. Web browsing performance was another area I wanted to explore. I tested the laptop a variety of light websites like Google and Mint forums, which loaded pretty quickly. For slightly heavier websites like Reddit or GitHub, it just did it without breaking a sweat. The real challenge is when I came to try watch YouTube, with video playback being one of the most taxing things for a computer. I was curious to see if this ThinkPad could fare. With the help of the H.264 extension for Firefox, which tweaks video codec to make it more efficient, the ThinkPad was able to play 720p and even 1080p video smoothly. That saying, streaming videos could be very taxing on the CPU, so if you try to do multiple things at once, like running multiple browser tabs or other applications, it might stutter or freeze. I also want to test with the Wi-Fi card. I ran a speed test and measured the download speed of about 40 megabits. This is close to my maximum internet speed, so the Wi-Fi performance was pretty good for regular use. It is still very usable for web browsing, streaming, and even downloading files. Lastly, I wanted to see if it could handle some gaming. I divided the gaming test into 3 categories: old 2D games, new 2D games, and old 3D games. I didn't test any new 3D games because, First, I tested Peggle, a casual 2D game, and that ran flawlessly, which, makes sense for what Peggle looks like. Next I tried Peglin, a roguelike of Peggle, released this year. Again, the laptop performed pretty well, but I think 40ish FPS just eyeballing it, which is very playable for this game. And last is GTA Vice City, which ran great. You could easily play the story like this. All games ran through Proton, a compatibility layer that allows Windows games to run on Linux, which just shows how effective Proton can be for running games on older hardware. These tests and benchmarks revealed that older laptops like this are surprisingly usable in 2024, even if they aren't capable of handling modern resource-intensive tasks. Sure, it can't handle the latest AAA games or video software, but it excels at basic tasks like writing, web browsing, and light gaming. So could you use a laptop like this today? Absolutely. And these types of machines can be better than budget laptops that came out like this year or last year, like Chromebooks. Chromebooks have terrible software. But again, this just shows how better older hardware can be. And you might say battery life, but one of the key advantages of an older device like this is its replaceable battery, which yes, newer laptops probably give better battery life overall, but now come with non-replaceable batteries that lock into your device for a long time. On the other hand, the battery is easy to swap out, so you can just extend its life without minimal hassle. While newer laptops tend to be slimmer and lighter, they often cut corners in areas like repairability, like soldered RAM, soldered storage, or just being hard to open up. So, should you buy a laptop like this today? Probably not. There are newer models available with better specs for a slightly higher price, such as the series ThinkPad T400s. However, if you already own a device like this, just try Linux. You'll be surprised how much more you can put into this laptop and see how well it can handle your basic tasks. But that's it for today's video. If you like it, please hit the like button and subscribe. And if you didn't like it, hit the dislike button. But that's it. Goodbye.